Hoosier Surveyor Podcast, brought to you by the Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors.
All right, welcome to episode 15 of the Hoosier Surveyor Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Swingley. We're here today with our producer, Ryan Selby.
Good morning.
Morning,
afternoon, whatever it is.
Whatever it is for you when you're listening to this. A little light crowd today for us, but back to the OGs, the guys that started the podcast for the most part, and just be us sitting here talking. Today is May 2nd. We are on the eve of, in my opinion, the greatest racing holiday of all time, the 105th running of the Kentucky Derby. So I know that's a little anti-Indianapolis 500 to say that's the greatest racing event, but I grew up in a horse racing family. My dad is a horse trainer. We actually went down and seen him run his horse in Keeneland a few weeks ago. So I'm always excited about the Kentucky Derby and the pageantry and the cocktails and, of course, the betting. Mm-hmm. That's always fun for me. Are you a Kentucky Derby guy?
No.
Indy 500 guy?
I'll watch the 500. I've gone a few times, but, I like to DVR the 500 and fast forward through the boring laps.
Yeah. I do like May in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I mean, when I moved here, again, I wasn't a car racing guy, but there definitely is just excitement in the air.
There's an energy.
Excitement in the air, sports-wise, going on big time here in Indianapolis. I mean, we got the Pacers are right now, it's a 3-2 in the series. They kind of blew one the other night, but Caitlin Clark is in town, and that's been a lot of excitement around that. Have you ever been to a WNBA game?
I have. It's been a few years, but
Right. Yeah, I've been to a couple myself, but I got a feeling there'll be a lot more people attending this year. I mean, I read a newspaper article the other day that, like, they're moving when they're playing away games, the other teams are moving into bigger facilities to handle larger fan base. And so it's pretty exciting. I mean, I was thinking about this morning, we've basically got the Michael Jordan of the WNBA here for the Indiana Fever, and so I think that's going to create some fun buzz. But what's been going on with you, personal life wise? Didn't your daughter celebrate her first birthday recently?
Yeah, she turned 1 at the beginning of April, so we had a nice birthday party for that. And then she's transitioning to the next class at our preschool.
Ooh.
Here. This is the last week at the newborn class, and then she'll move into the 1-year-old class next week. So
does Mama have a little tear in her eye for all the growth?
It's a bittersweet week for her, for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing that can stop change.
No, and we're getting a few steps in. It won't be long before it's an all-out sprint around the house. I think.
Wow.
So we'll be there before we know it.
Before you know it, you'll be putting a prison pole in her hand and asking her to take some topo shots.
Exactly. Here, go set this can up on that scan target.
Yeah, there you go. Not a ton of topics to discuss today, but we had we always like to do a board meeting recap. We did have a board meeting on April 19th at HQ. I was a little out of sorts during that meeting because I flew in from North Carolina that night. I was slated to land at, I think, midnight, and my flight got rerouted through Chicago. I didn't get in until 4 in the morning, so I was a little bit late to the meeting, but a few interesting things that were discussed there. The first and foremost, and probably the most important, and what I missed most of, I was listening while I was driving, but the investment reserve policies. Can you give a little background to our audience about kind of how this came about and kind of where we're going to land?
Yeah, it amazes me. I didn't have financial policies on my radar when I started my term as president, but it seems like these first few meetings have been very financial heavy.
Sure.
But there was a comment made by, I think it was Gary Kent at the business meeting at the convention about our current funds with the chapter and what our plans were with them. And that kind of started the conversation. And so we've taken a little bit at the last couple meetings to kind of start discussing that. We'll be making our budget in June. So we've kind of got a head start on that and looking at our investments, our current funding, and kind of what our financial policies are when it comes to the money that we have in the main society funds, and then we've got the foundation funds as well. So this one we had a couple advisors from RGI that were there to kind of help guide the conversation a little bit.
They were giving a little bit of perspective from what other groups they manage, what their financial policies are.
Yep. So, we were looking at our reserve policy, our rainy day fund, if you want to call it that, kind of what's the industry standard, what do we want to do as a society. So there was a lot of discussion about that. Do we want 100% of an operating budget, which has kind of been the thought process for the last few years, that unofficial, it's not in writing anywhere, but that's kind of been the rule of thumb.
Yeah, that goes back, probably way beyond even when I was on the board. I've been involved with the board off and on since 2005, and it's always been 100% of our operating expenses what we like to have in reserve. I think COVID probably opened our eyes to the realities of that. The realities are, if there was a catastrophic event that would mean that we had no membership dues coming in, no income whatsoever, we wouldn't really need to hold a convention. So, and a large percentage of our expenditure annually is our convention. So it's kind of opened our eyes to what direction we should go. I don't know if I'm a fan of official policy to do that, or, we want the flexibility to do what we see fit. But I think at a minimum, having if we dropped everyone off the board, we're lucky right now that we have a handful of people that have been involved long enough to provide perspective of the past. But should there be complete turnover of the board, having a policy in place that would guide that board, I don't think is a bad idea.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The board transitions, there's new people coming in and people dropping off every year. So, to have a guideline out there, there's nothing that says that we can't change that guideline.
Right.
But at least having a guideline out there that kind of we're all on the same page. Hey, here's what our guideline is.
Yeah.
So, I think we kind of landed somewhere, we're thinking somewhere in the 75% range. We haven't made any final decisions. So we've kind of tasked Brian Lewis with coming up with a draft of that. And so he's going to kind of go through and break down, what we think our rainy day fund should be, what percentage of it, and then kind of maybe some guidelines on what do we do with what we have above that amount.
Sure.
And then also we talked about a percentage of those funds being used in our operating budget to kind of give us a little more flexibility, a little more fun to use to make those decisions, make our budget balance, and still provide all the services that we need to provide.
Right. I remember our last budget cycle, we've come from, like I said, in my perspective, we've come from budgets that were in the red, and right off the gate we're in the red. And it was very important for us to have a budget in the black. And we were robbing from Peter to pay Paul on our budget to make sure it was a balanced budget, when in reality we could have pulled $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 out of our investments to give to the president. We're always kind of fighting for getting money for the president's contingency, or travel for people to go to NSPS meetings and things like that. And it seems silly to really struggle to balance that budget when we do have some extra funds that we can pull from. So I think 50% was maybe a little too big of a jump, going from traditional
100 to 50,
100 to 50, but 75 is a nice little easy place. We can ride that out for a couple of years, see how that works for us. I think the idea is should we have funds in excess of that? We can dispose of those funds in ways that benefit the surveying society. Maybe that is we go heavy on scholarships one year. Maybe
Yeah.
we go ahead and give that money to the foundation, keep that pool going, because the more they have, the more they can give away in perpetuity. So, and then maybe we fund special funds. Maybe we send a larger group to NSPS. We got a lot of flexibility though. So, with I hate to call it a disposal policy, but let's spend some of the funds that we have in excess of what our goals are. So I think it could be a positive for all society. I don't know the legality of it, but could we fund our PAC PAC group a little heavier one year, especially when we have maybe a big change, a rule change coming, or a request for a change. We could really dive into our PAC, funding and get
make
some
sure
of
we
those
have
things
that
done.
support.
And then, we haven't given our lobbyists a raise in quite some time, and that's probably coming. So we'll be prepared for that. So
For sure.
Other things we talked about were, you want to talk about the Frontiva transition?
The Fontiva, yeah.
Fontiva, yeah.
So I think we probably discussed it on here before, but for those that don't know, we made a decision at the beginning of the year to transition from our current database system that we've been using for the past few years to this Fontiva system, which is a more robust system. It's based on the Salesforce platform, and it was, to be honest, it was a lot more expensive than our old system previously. And then there was a price hike in the old system, which made it about equivalent to this system. This system's way more robust. So it was kind of an easy no-brainer to make the switch. So Brian Lewis has been working real hard on the transition. It's going well. He's been meeting with them, I think, weekly to kind of keep things on track. And it looks like they're going to be moving all of the data from the old system to the new one. They should have been doing that by the end of April. And then here somewhere around mid-May, they're going to start live testing the new system. And hopefully by the end of May, that new system will be live.
What do you know any of the highlights of what we get out of it? How it's better?
I think it's going to, as a user, I'm not totally clear exactly where we will see all the changes quite yet. But I know on the back end, there's a lot of things from the RGI standpoint as far as managing the organization and the society and all your dues and signing up for events and convention registrations and all of that kind of stuff that we sign up for through the website. All that stuff is going to be streamlined and made a lot more user-friendly, especially for them managing it. And I'm sure we'll see it as well. One of the things is our website that we had or that we currently have, the ISPLS.org website, is completely based on that old system. It was like provided as part of that old system. Well, with this new system, it's a WordPress website. Okay. So with the old one, there were limitations on what we could change on that website. It didn't have all the tools that a WordPress website has. So it'll be a completely new website. It's being completely rebuilt. So we will have more options there to customize our website, make it more modern, more user-friendly. We can add more stuff to it. Things that we've asked for as a society for the last few years to change up, we'll be able to do.
Yeah, I remember us, with our workforce development website was completely separate from our existing website. I assume that has to do with some of the things you just mentioned, the lack of flexibility. And I'm assuming that, those will be concatenated into a single site or something that, drives users to that would also see some of our other stuff on our website. So
yeah, for sure. I think so. I think ultimately it would be nice if we could get it all under one website so that we're not sending people to two different places for
Right.
two different reasons. One website, go there, go whichever way you need to go.
Now, I do recall there was some mention of managing CEUs. Do you know if that's going to be a part of that? Or?
Yeah, I think there's some options available for it. Again, there's a lot of add-ons with this new system.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it has price associated with it. So I think we're going to have to get in, see what we have, see what we want to add. But there's flexibility to add a lot of those add-ons in there where maybe we could manage all the CEUs and all that kind of stuff through the system.
Yeah. Some of the new business we discussed was the 26-27 convention venue proposals.
Mm-hmm.
So currently, I don't know if people know this or not, but what RGI has brought to the table is putting our conference out to bid so we get the best possible deal we can. That's been, I think, successful. The Grand Wayne was a fabulous deal, a fabulous facility in Fort Wayne. I really like that. It's kind of become, kind of our front runner of our preferred venue. But we can't have it in Fort Wayne every year. So this last year was at the Embassy Suite in Noblesville. I thought it was a nice venue, a little small.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to be in Evansville in 2025 at the Hilton. And right now on the proposal side, we have the Hyatt Regency, Indianapolis, Embassy Suites by Hilton in Plainfield at the Indianapolis Airport, which that could be a good setup.
Mm-hmm.
In the Embassy Suites, Noblesville, Indianapolis Conference Center, which is where we had 2025.
Yep.
The Horizon Conference Center, where is that at? I know I've heard of that, but we got Courtyard by Marriott in Muncie, Hampton Inn, somewhere here in Indianapolis, I assume. And then for 2027, we have on the docket the Grand Wayne again, the Canterbury Center in South Bend, Doubletree by Hilton in South Bend. So several South Bend options, which could be nice. So nothing set in stone right now, but we're just looking for where our venues are going to be. We're getting ready to have our first conference committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's tomorrow, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
I think it is. Yeah.
So what we do with that is what we've done this last conference is basically, the previous hosting chapter is on the committee, and then the next two hosting chapters are on the committee. The idea is sharing of lessons learned, sharing of who we like with speakers, so that we're not reinventing the wheel with every conference. I do head up that chair, or I chair that committee. I call it the Doug Harrington Committee because Doug Harrington did all this stuff for years. But I think it's been fun to have a little bit more input. I mean, there was a handful of years there we just had almost no input. It was just boom, here's the conference, and it's nice to get a little bit more input from the chapters, that are hosting, and make sure it's what they want. So I thought Noblesville was nice. I'm really looking forward to Evansville. The Southwest chapter has been extremely involved, even through last year's planning. So I think it's exciting times.
It will be. It definitely will be. So, I'm looking forward to hearing what we decide tomorrow, as we look at it. I think that was something we brought up, the proposals, kind of briefly looked at it, but that was something I wanted to table and let the committee kind of really hash out. And these our meetings on Fridays when we have these board meetings are not that long, really. So in order to make sure we get through everything, that was something I felt we needed to push. One thing I do want to go back and mention was a couple things in the reports was the staffing update. We do have a new communications coordinator, Katie Anderson, and we have a new membership coordinator and events coordinator with RGI. So you may see some emails coming from some new names, but they will be on board to help us along with Brian Lewis. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that was in the committee reports was the new monument law that will go into effect July 1st. So Senate Bill 36, I think we might have talked about it at the last podcast, but this was proposed this year and ended up passing unanimously through both the House, Senate, and was signed by the governor. So it will go into effect July 1st. And basically it reads that anyone that is not the homeowner that purposefully disturbs a surveying monument is committing a Class C infraction. So $500 fine for the infraction. And then in addition, the court may order the person who violates it to pay the landowner's cost to have the monument replaced.
Right.
So, so it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah,
it's a little bit
absolutely.
of some recourse if we have monuments disturbed.
Sure. That could be very interesting to see that play out in court, in the future. We'll see how that works out.
And we're currently working with Gary to create a press release for this. And my hopes with it is that I know a lot of times at around July 1st, when all these new laws go into place, you usually get these news stories about what these new laws are.
Right.
So I'm hoping to get a press release out to the different news stations and maybe use it as an opportunity to have some public relations, some free PR for the surveying profession, and to get it out there and maybe get some talk on the local news about it.
Yeah, it'd be good to see you on the news.
Yeah, we'll see if I end up there or Mr. Kent ends up there, but we will see. So I wanted to go back and mention those two items as well.
Yeah, very cool. Well, it's always good to see, number one, the legislative committee and our lobbyists continuing to get traction, in the law process. So always a positive.
Another win for us.
If we look at more of our agenda items, I mean, I think that hit most of the big topics. I mean, we identified in our last goal setting session that the education of technicians is one of our top priorities. We've really, I think, yet to pin down what that looks like.
Yeah.
There was some discussion. Jessica Hess shared a lot of resources with me because her and I are kind of heading this up, and some videos on YouTube. And so I think those low-hanging fruit versus to post that to the website. I mean, I actually used some of the videos to study for a state exam that I just took. I haven't done double proportioning of section corners in a long time. So I watched the video as a refresher, and I thought it was a great resource. So
that's good.
hopefully in the new website we can kind of put that up there. Pretty exciting stuff.
And I do know we'll probably talk a little more about it later, but I know that NSPS is looking to start transitioning to focusing a little on that as well. So
not just bringing people in, but educating our current
so
staff. Yeah.
They've kind of been doing their first focus was on outreach, and so they've kind of focused on that. They've got a document ready to go live here very soon in the next couple weeks, and then their next step is to start looking at training our current staff. So,
right.
And creating some of those resources. So hopefully we can pair up and start using some of that information from NSPS as well.
Right.
So we won't have to do as much.
I'm on the CST board for NSPS, and we've been, Tricia Milburn has been developing an outline for how to train people for the CST exam. I think that's the first step. We were talking about putting together maybe some videos and things like that for self-paced study. So it's pretty exciting to see the whole community rally around this concept. I mean, I think that's the beauty of NSPS and the state chapter. What do you want to call it? 100%.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call that?
Is it really an MOU? Is it really kind of a
that's right. Yeah, memorandum of understanding that we all of our members are their members.
Yeah.
We have they're up to 48 states, I believe.
I think they're really close. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not quite. There's a couple states that we're.
I think they're still in negotiation, but I think they're getting close on another one. I think I heard last week.
So that provides a real united voice across the country, united initiatives. Everyone seems to be buying in the process. I mean, things can be improved. Let's there could be a little bit more continuity, but for the most part, we all have the same goals, and we seem to be rowing in the same direction. So, and speaking of NSPS, you just came back from the spring meeting.
Yeah, that was a really unique experience. I really enjoyed it. It's something that I would recommend to anyone, any of our membership, to go out there. You're all welcome. So, and they're spring meetings. It's not a conference.
Yeah.
So there's no cost other than your hotel and your flight out there. As far as
and out there is the spring meeting is always in Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Yep. So this year our hotel was in Arlington. We were at a Hilton in Arlington. It was all right there in house. Everything, all of our meetings were there except for the day on the Hill. And it was on top of a Metro line stop. So I don't know how much you've rode the Metro in DC, but it's super user friendly. I was very impressed. First time on it, and you just escalator right down out of the front doors of the hotel into the Metro line. You could hop on 20 minutes. You could be on the mall. So it for like $3. So
wow. So the
really
meeting
nice.
is what, from Monday to Friday, or what's the schedule of the meetings?
It's kind of so the day on the Hill was on Tuesday. Okay. So Monday evening about 6:30 they had kind of a briefing Monday evening, last minute training session for the day on the Hill, where they kind of refreshed on all the topics. There was an online version of the training like a couple weeks before that.
Okay.
That you could go to, and then they kind of rehashed it all right.
So everyone's traveling Monday.
Yeah, everybody's pretty well coming in Monday. Monday evening was the training for that. All day Tuesday was Day on the Hill. So when you sign up for Day on the Hill, the lobbyists for NSPS schedules all your meetings. So they'd gone through and they ask when you sign up where your office is located, where your home's located, and then they try to go through and identify all of your congressional representatives from your areas, and then they try to get you scheduled with appointments with those.
So who do we have from Indiana that was representing us?
So I was the main one that signed up, and then Tony Gregory and Gary Kent were both out there as well. So the three of us were kind of the Indiana delegation that were there for Day on the Hill. So we were able to meet with. They got us scheduled with meetings with both senators, so Young and Braun. We met with their staff. And then on the House side, we met with Congressman Greg Pence's office and Andre Carson, which is the representative for here on the north side of Indy. Mm-hmm. So the House was on recess, so none of their elected officials were in town, and a lot of their office staff was it was a vacation time for most of them. So. Right. So it was a lot quieter, I think, on the Hill than what it could have been. And then the Senate, they were actually in session. We thought they were going to be on recess, and they actually were in session. I think there was a couple major votes last week that they were there for. Unfortunately, they were so busy we didn't meet with any of the elected officials, but we did get time with all of their staff. Right. So it was good. We took 3 topics to the Hill. We covered... one of the topics was delicensure, and they were looking for a sense of Congress, kind of it's an unofficial opinion from Congress on the state of an issue. So we were asking them for kind of some exemptions from any delicensing talk.
Okay.
So for them to kind of put out there that if anything comes up at the state level, we have something to turn to, that, hey, Congress has said that the design professions like architects, engineers, surveyors should be exempt from any of that blanket delicensing discussion that's out there.
Yeah, and for those listeners that don't know, I mean, we have combated deregulation of our profession no less than twice over the last 10 years. I can remember we've testified at Senate hearings in the state of Indiana at least twice on the validity of our license and why it should not be removed or deregulated.
Yeah.
To have some federal teeth behind that would be extremely powerful. So
very much so. And there's at least one state every year
Yeah,
that is dealing with it at some point at the state level.
Right.
The second topic was dealing with kind of back to monument preservation, but more on the natural disaster side. So I think this really stemmed from the wildfires in like Paradise, California, and Lahaina, Hawaii. And when there's these major natural disasters, usually in the cleanup efforts, they just bring heavy equipment in and they just scrape everything off, all the debris. When you're talking wildfires, you've got carcinogens in the burn path, so they usually come in and scrape the top couple feet of the soil away to get rid of all those carcinogens, or at least turn it over. And so they were destroying all of our section corners, all of our property corners. So we asked for a provision to put into the disaster relief planning that either we do some pre-planning to kind of locate those monuments or know where those monuments are so that they can be salvaged and replaced, and then also funding through FEMA. So like if your house gets destroyed, I mean, you can apply to FEMA in these natural disaster areas to have your house rebuilt, but you can't apply to have your property resurveyed.
Sure, right.
So, adding that provision in there so that the survey, so they can know where to rebuild that house, is in the funding. So,
that sounds pretty cool. I mean, did the staffers seem supportive of that?
They seemed open to it. They understood what we were there asking. It took a little bit for us to, I mean, they understand definitely the wildfire. That one's real obvious, but we had to do a little bit of explaining what these corners are,
right?
And then getting them to understand that this is still a situation for us with tornadoes and stuff like that, flooding, those kind of issues that we see here in Indiana can also be an issue for that.
Well, you start to think, well, why is that a big deal? But then you start to think, okay, a homeowner's everything they had was destroyed, and they need to go through the approval process. Just because their house was torn down doesn't mean that zoning ordinances and proper planning is not needed. And maybe they spent their money on a lot of other things to get themselves back up, and now they're going to get burdened with a $2,000 to $10,000 survey cost. And so, I think that's kind of neat that, we can rally behind those needs and find funding for that. So that's cool.
Yeah. And then our third topic that we took, it's usually 3 topics every year, was a pilot program for the Department of Defense's Transition Assistance Program. So when a military member is getting out of the service for that last year before they get out, they go through this Transition Assistance Program, or TAP is what they call it. And in this TAP program, they learn how to build resumes, how to transition to civilian life from the military life. But one thing that currently that program is lacking is nowhere in that year transition do those counselors with the military actually say, hey, here's what you were doing in the military, here's how it translates to the civilian world. So what NSPS wanted to take to them is add a pilot program in there, let the surveyors be the guinea pigs, and let us identify the military occupational specialties that these soldiers were doing that are directly related to surveying, and point them to us.
Sure.
So, identify those, use us, and then let's broaden that then and use that for other industries as well.
Right.
So that was the third thing we took, is to kind of talk to the military committees to get that added into the national defense budget.
Very cool. Very cool. Sounds like a busy, action-packed day on Tuesday.
Yeah, it was a busy one getting around. It was good to have Gary and Tony there with me. Both of them are veterans of it. They usually are alone up there, just the two of them. So I think they like seeing a new face with them as well. But yeah, it was good
Carrying
to have them there.
a big stick as ISPLS president too.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, for sure. It helped. But it was good to have them there. They kind of knew their way around. I think Gary had been to the Hill enough times that he didn't need to look at a map to find out which one of the house buildings we were going to and how to get around. So that made it a little nicer. So long day of walking though.
Right. So. All right. So that got us through Tuesday. What's the rest of the week look like?
Committee meetings. So Wednesday was committee meetings all day. There's a ton of various committees throughout NSPS. I personally attended Young Surveyors in the morning.
Okay.
So I was, since Dugan, our Young Surveyor committee chair, was not available to go this year, I kind of went in his place. So I kind of listened in to what was going on. That's a good group of young surveyors that are motivated to make something happen. So it was really good to sit in that room with, I think there was probably 20 or 30 states there, maybe somewhere around there, and to hear kind of what each of them are doing. We kind of did around the room, kind of talk about what different groups are doing in different states, and kind of hear what they're doing. Camping trips are popular.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think there's 2 or 3 going on. And then actually I talked with the Kentucky rep after the meeting, and he expressed interest of maybe getting with Dugan and seeing if maybe Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois can kind of get a little regional get together and, just have some fun together and then talk survey. You know how it is.
Sure.
Get any of us around a table, a campfire, anything, and we're going to tell stories.
Right.
So, and then some of them are working with like Boy Scout troops and doing some things like that. So it was a good time. And then in the afternoon, I sat through the workforce development. Their committee meeting. I thought, that's one of our main topics that we're focusing on here in Indiana. So sat through that. It's really good. Like I talked about, the Outreach 101 manual should be coming out here very soon. They kind of presented that and what it's going to look like. A draft copy's out. And then once it gets kind of reviewed by all the committee members, that's going to go live probably in the next couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of their thought behind that was it's a binder you'll be able to get, or a PDF for the digital version of a binder. But let's say you want to go talk to an elementary school. You've got a section just on elementary school, and you can go to it. It's going to give you suggested things to bring, suggested presentations, activities. All those resources that you're going to need are going to be there for K through 5, 6 through 9, or 6 through 8, 9 through 12, and then above that. And so you've got different sectors where anybody then kind of, it relieves that that hesitance to, well, I don't know, I've never done one of these before. How do I, what do I take? What do I do? It gives you somewhere to go to look at all that stuff.
Sure.
So I think it's been a lot of work in the making, but I think it's gonna be really good for everyone to use as a resource.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many people were in attendance in each committee meeting, you think? I mean, how many were in attendance total, and how many you think just guesstimate were in each of these committee meetings?
I know the day on the Hill, they said there were 42 states there, 70 people, and we went to 128 meetings. Okay. So I think most of those states were probably there throughout
Right.
the whole week. So, there was probably a good 40, 45 states
Okay.
in attendance. And then some states brought 2 or 3 people. Some states had 1. So, we're talking, there was probably, that 70 people for the day on the Hill were probably most of the ones that ended up in the committee meetings the rest of the week. So, these meetings had, like workforce development. It was, I think it's a little more well-attended event. So it probably had, let's see, quick math would be probably 30 to 40 people in that one.
Okay.
I mean, it was a pretty big meeting.
Yeah.
So
you had that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, anything going on? Or?
Yeah, Thursday morning was kind of wrapping up some of the committee meetings. There was 2 or 3 of them. I didn't end up attending any Thursday morning, but then Thursday afternoon was when the actual board meetings happen. So it's very similar to what we go through. They had their normal board meeting that morning, talked about, old business, new business, same kind of thing, just on a larger scale as we have. And then they had their the open membership meeting was for a short time in the afternoon, kind of like us, kind of meet that requirement for a nonprofit kind of organization to have that business meeting every year. And it kind of just hit on the highlights from the board meeting in the morning.
Sure.
And then Thursday evening was a banquet similar to what we do. They installed the new officers, that kind of thing. Thursday evening. And then Friday morning was kind of the second half of the board meeting, and the new officers were in there. So new business kind of happened. So old business happened on Thursday under the old leadership. New business happened on Friday under the new leadership.
And officers of the board, and the board is made up of delegates, right? Every delegate that's appointed by our society, like our delegate is Tony Gregory, and officers are elected from that group, correct? There's no if you're not part of that, you can get elected. I don't think.
I believe it has to. The directors are the ones that are on the ballot for the officers. I believe it appeared that way.
Sure.
From those that were up there. Now, once you become an officer on there, then I think most of those officers also had another delegate from the state there, kind of replaced them with a new delegate.
I see.
So, yeah.
What about the student competition? Did you get a check that out?
It ran Sunday through Tuesday.
Okay.
So I missed out on Sunday. Was kind of like Day on the Hill. Sunday was like the prep meeting Sunday evening. And then Monday, Tuesday was the student competition, and there were 26 teams, I believe.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was a lot.
How many students on each team?
At a minimum, I think 4 or 5. Some teams had like 8 or 9.
Okay.
It was a full house of students, which was impressive.
Right.
So they split the teams into 2 groups, or they split all the teams into 2 groups. So they sent half the teams to the monument hunt on Monday, and then they sent the other half to the other events on the mall, and so which was down around Washington Monument, on the lawn there outside or off the Washington Monument, and they did a traverse with some old school antique type equipment. They did a level circuit using like an old dumpy level, and they did a angle calculation. And for the angle calcs, like they were using a T2, and they were set on a monument outside off the Washington Monument, and they were sighting like the tip of the Washington Monument as one of them, and then they had a target set up on like the Jefferson Stone or one of the other monuments there on the mall, and they were turning the angles and then and I think they turned angles from 2 different positions. I think it was more of like a resection. I think they turned angles from 2 different positions and then had to calculate a point or something
like
that.
Of the monument,
or
those angles intersect.
Exactly, or something like that. So it was a cool to see, 13 teams running around out there on the mall around the monument. There were some tents set up with some vendors there.
Like what kind of vendors? Like who was there?
Like Sam was there.
Okay.
NSPS
people
had
potentially
booths.
recruiting some of these students.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, potentially.
I never would have thought of that. That'd be cool though.
Or even I think Esri might have had one there. Some people like that as well. So some of the vendors might have. I was running around doing so many different things. I didn't step through all the different tents that were there, but it was an opportunity just for public awareness. And they said that the people that were manning those stations said that there was a lot of the general public that just walked up and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Tell me what's going on here."
Yeah.
And so it was really cool to be there, just to get, whole student groups might walk up and be like, "What are you doing?" And we could expose them to surveying.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Well, that's really cool.
They had the mini monument open outside the Washington Monument.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of that, but I didn't just see it. So.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. And NGS took the opportunity while they had the permit to be on the mall. They took the opportunity to run levels through the Washington Monument benchmarks.
Okay.
So they were running a full-on digital level INVAR rods, taking all the different temperatures at the different heights and everything they do for a high-order level circuit, and they were checking on settling of the Washington Monument.
Okay.
So, I think they do it. They've got a schedule of so often they do it, and they just happened to take the opportunity while they were there to run that. So a team from NGS was there doing that while we were there too. So
cool.
Yeah. It was a fun event.
So who won the student competition?
Akron. Akron picked up the first place in the bachelor's degree, and Puerto Rico took second place. I remember those two, and I can't remember who placed in the other
Ferris State off their back-to-back championships. Oh my goodness!
So
that's good to have that level of competition that you can unseat the two-time champion. I'm sure they're more than a two-time champion, but they had won the last 2 years.
2 years,
so.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think when Puerto Rico got named as the 2 spot, Akron kind of started to dip their head, thinking that they might have lost out to Ferris, and then they named them, and it was pretty exciting. So,
wow. So they have a bachelor's degree category and an associate's degree category?
Yes. Yeah. So it was fun though. And then there's some social events. There was a game night on Tuesday night, I believe. And they had, Gary came and did his Surveyor Jeopardy with the students, and they played some bingo and had dinner and that kind of stuff. So,
what about social, just amongst all the attendees in the evening? I mean, assume there's a lot of opportunities to go to dinner and have some cocktails and. Yeah,
because most of the meetings were ending around 4-ish. So your evenings were kind of open. So
you could meet with any surveying celebrities besides Mr. Kent, of course.
Well, I mean, there were quite a few big names there.
Yeah.
So, you hear a lot of the names. Ben Shinneberry from down in Kentucky.
Of course. Yeah.
He's a big one. You're going to make me try to remember names now, but there's quite a few. What's her name from Esri? Linda Foster. She's a big one. I mean, all the NSPS staff you hear about, and just the leadership from NSPS, those are big names that you hear talked about all year long. So there's quite a few of them there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just impressive. All the representatives, it was a nice, diverse group from all of them.
Yeah.
So it was really good.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, since we're on the topic of surveying competitions, this is a good segue into our upcoming surveying Olympics.
Yes.
We've talked about this on previous podcasts, but do you have the date available?
August 31st.
August 31st, and it's down in the state park in Brown County. I'm sure there'll be more details coming out. As a matter of fact, there's a sign-up sheet coming out with somewhat of a deadline, so we'd like to see some teams get signed up. But we do have a couple different categories. Would be individual competition, team competition and student competition.
Yes.
So if you would like to come out and show how great of a surveyor you are and how great of a team that you have, you can compete in our version of a surveying competition in the form of the Olympics.
For sure.
So pretty excited about that. We need to get some teams signed up, but I think it's going to be a good fun. But a lot of things happen in Indiana. A lot of things happen in the surveying profession. I mean, we were just talking at lunch today that we're starting to see the fruits of our labor for workforce development. I can remember the time where Vincennes University was down to 8 freshmen. I mean, that's when we started getting pretty serious about deciding on how we're going to get more people in this profession. And, at the board meeting, we talked about this a little bit, and she's got 60 students down there right now.
Yeah.
So, things are really starting to turn the tide our way. We got to double down on training of our technicians and quote unquote paraprofessionals, whether you like that term. No one reached out to me if they like that term or not, but we've been using it. But it's exciting times. We're rolling into summertime, which is always a fruitful time for all of us surveyors. Everyone will be busy. So just I know we've been saying it a lot, but damn, it's a great time to be a surveyor.
It really is.
So
yeah, for sure.
And really, I think that's where we ought to leave this and end it. And I don't really have a tagline today other than that. It's a great time to be a surveyor.
Yes,
so
I agree.
With that, this is Ryan Selby and Ryan Swingley saying it's a great time to be a surveyor. Go out there and share that message with the world. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to the Hoosier Surveyor Podcast, brought to you by the Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors. For more information about the society, please visit ISPLS.org, or if you are new to the profession, you can find helpful resources at futureindianasurveyor.com.